So one thing I did want to ask is, what's it like just being in a situation where you've got a system that's completely set up by yourself? Because most people, if they have a problem, there is like a place they can go to for support. They can go to their distro or either their distro or like resources surrounding their distro. But basically, what you've got is LFS, BLFS, and then from there, you're basically on your own, besides like material that exists for the specific software.
Yeah, so there was the XE situation,
Mm-hmm.
and the thing with LFS and BLFS is they have mailing lists,
Okay.
and they can discuss vulnerabilities
Mm-hmm.
to the audience that does use LFS and BLFS.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just said, "Hey, there's a vulnerability. We recommend downgrading to this version."
Mm-hmm.
And whenever there's a vulnerability, you can just compile the old version yourself, and sometimes there's no issues. Other times there are going to be issues because of ABI stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a common issue that happens with glibc, and that's why I hate glibc, because if the ABI changes in glibc, if you want to upgrade, you have to recompile your entire system,
Mm-hmm. When you're doing
which is
that,
not fun to do.
yeah, I wouldn't expect so. When you're doing that, what I use Arch, right? Like if I have a problem like this, I just upgrade packages. But I assume you have to like do things in a specific order to make sure you don't just completely brick your system.
Um, it really depends,
Mm-hmm.
because when an upgrade happens with a certain package or a downgrade, the thing you really only have to worry about is how the libraries interact with other libraries, and if the API remains the same,
Mm-hmm.
just downgrade or upgrade your package, be done with it. But if there's an API change, then you have to figure out the entire dependency tree and go from the bottom of the dependency tree upwards.
Well, I mean, in cases like
So you
glibc,
have,
obviously different applications, very much like it's gonna be a different case. But like when you have an issue where you need to mess with glibc, like that, I would imagine could cause some serious problems.
yeah, the LFS team basically recommends that you just recompile, which means you just start at stage zero, like square, basically just go ahead and do LFS and BLFS again.
Oh, oh, okay.
That's what I mean by recompilation of LFS, is by literally just following LFS and BLFS again, because if you try to upgrade those all those packages,
Mm-hmm.
it's probably not going to work at the end of the day. You're just going to brick stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So just recompile again with the newer glibc version.
Mm-hmm.
However, the API nowadays doesn't really change
Mm-hmm.
that much. And so what you can end up doing is just apply a bunch of patches and be completely fine. You can just upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
But it really depends, and you have to research before you actually upgrade. Otherwise, you can end up breaking your system.
So, what sort of update cycle do you have for your system? I know you mentioned you hadn't upgraded your kernel in a while, but how often do you generally upgrade things?
Only when I really, only when I really need to, because a lot of packages just don't need updating at all,
Mm-hmm.
and so you can end up having most of your packages just be like over a year old, and you'll be just fine.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's only like really important ones like OpenSSL, the graphics driver, um, sometimes curl, and just anything involving the internet.
Yeah, like so your browser, things like that.
Yeah, besides that, you don't really need to upgrade at all. You can just stay on old software and be just fine because you're on a source-based distro.
Hmm.
If you're on a binary distro, then you basically have to upgrade everything because those libraries depend on those libraries' compile time.
Hmm. So, okay. So the answer is there isn't much of an update cycle. It's just what desperately needs to be upgraded gets upgraded, but other things kind of
Or
just
just not
sit there.
important.
Yeah. Have
Yeah,
you have you ever
that's why
okay, on.
that's why whenever people mention maintainability of LFS, I'm just like, what maintainability? There's a little maintainability to be done. You just run your system for the most part.
So, where is it? I know in BLFS, isn't there a section on
I
uh
think it's like called package management.
yeah, there is a section on package management. Some whatever it's called. Um what's
Um, I literally have a tab open just because I've been making a book. But let's see
So I was
here.
going to ask like have you considered actually using a package manager? I know that you said you like having things from source, so I'm going to assume the answer is probably no, but it's definitely an
It's
option there.
just yeah, and I know that's what a lot of people do. I
Mhm.
know there's one member in your server that has a package manager, and by all means, that's a perfectly fine way to do things. But I just like going for it, just doing what I need and not have to worry about a package manager.
Well, yeah,
Just because I couldn't really benefit from one
if you're installing a package manager,
with the way
really
I'm doing things.
you're just turning your system into like a whole nother thing then. Like if you're installing Pac-Man, for example, and you're pulling in from the Arch repos, just install Arch. Like you've you've just got a more broken version of Arch then.
Yeah, you know a mental outlaw, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he covered like installing a separate package manager on Gen 2, like installing Pac-Man on Gen 2, and it's like he covered why that's a really bad idea because Arch the Pac-Man manager is just gonna it's just gonna pull in all the dependencies it thinks it needs despite what you already have on your system.
Hmm.
Because it has no way of knowing what dependencies you actually have on your system unless it uses package config in
Hmm.
which Pac-Man doesn't rely on at
Hmm.
all.
Hmm. One thing you've mentioned before is you have done a bunch of LFS installs. How many would you say at this point?
Yeah, I said about like over 10.
Okay. Do you manually go through everything at this point, or do you have scripts set up to automate parts of it?
All of the attempts have been manual
Okay.
by hand.
How long
And
does it
if I had to
take
give
you?
like a total
Oh, go on. Yes.
with like Steam and Wine, it takes about like 40 hours. 35 to get like just basic stuff, but if you want like Firefox and stuff like that,
Right.
then it takes 40 hours.
Aha.
If you're just installing, if I just install LFS, it only takes 6 hours.
Mm-hmm.
But if I go through BLFS, it ends up being about 35 hours to 40 hours.
Over how long would that usually take you? Like, if you are going through an LFS install, like, how much time per day are you spending on it?
Um, let's see. Well, I did I did mention that I have autism, and so I just spend whatever time I'm doing like really dedicated to the craft, you know. I
Mhm.
spend a lot of hours in one single session not eating or drinking at all. So
Right.
I just spend like about like 8 hours every day just going at it.
I thought you were gonna say you just spend 36 hours and get it done. Just one go. Don't
I need
sleep.
I need s- I I need sleep, you know.
You don't need sleep. You can sleep is for the weak.
I can just compile my kernel. I could spend whatever time sleeping to compile software.
That's true. Just get a slower CPU so you can sleep longer.
True.